Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Figure It Outcast for August 2021. I am your host, Adam Koralik, and this month I am joined once again by Abdullah, who will say hello in 1 second, but we do not have Rob with us this time. Our boy Rob Janos was very busy this month, and unfortunately, schedules are what they are, and he couldn't join us. So this might actually be the best podcast we've ever done, Abdullah. What do you think? Welcome back.
First of all, I'm happy to be back again. The thing is, I'm usually here for Rob. I mean, I'm kind of out of the common equations, but I kind of miss Rob. I mean, who are we gonna ridicule, right? I mean, who are we gonna have fun with?
That's true. We need someone to punish for being here. Well, it won't be you because you're too nice. I guess it's me now. I guess I'm the bad one. That sucks. You're gonna take over. Like, I really missed you last month because you had things going on, and it was just me and Rob. You know what that's like? That is not fun.
Look, I get you, dude, but the thing is, it's about Rob is that it's an acquired taste.
It really is.
But we miss Rob. We need Rob. We need Rob.
In all seriousness, we do miss Rob. For those who are unfamiliar with this is a Patreon-backed podcast, and Rob is traditionally the DLC. So what that means is this is my podcast for, it's up on my Patreon, and as a group tier, when people support it, that unlocks the ability to get Rob. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen this month due to his schedule, but if you do support it, you'll keep Rob around when he's available. You'll also get early access to the podcast, early access to videos. You can have shout outs, you can pick subjects, and like Abdullah here, you can even be on the podcast. So, I mean, Abdullah, do you like doing this podcast? I hope you'd say yes.
Of course I do. I'm happy, but the upsetting thing is that I really do miss Rob here. But because jokes aside, his intakes are really, really interesting. And yeah, I do enjoy this podcast. So anyone here who has the chance, go for it. It's awesome to get to engage and get some information and get some other perspectives.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And in all seriousness, we do wish Rob the best. He's just, let's just put it this way, he's been extraordinarily busy because a lot of things lately in life have just hit him over the head, and he basically had to take extra shifts at work, and it's not really worth going into. We just wish him the best. So
all the best.
Hopefully his schedule should loosen up soon, and we shouldn't have this problem again. But we hope he does well. Hey, it's post-production Adam here. So I need to give a big disclaimer. So this is one of the disadvantages of doing the podcast, a few weeks before it actually comes out. So the next subject is ultimately about the WATA gaming stuff, but this was before the news broke that it's primarily like a scam. And so you have to understand what you're about to hear was our perspective on it before that was known. So some of the stuff we say is now ridiculously wrong and ridiculously out of date. So I just wanted to give that update to it. So you can enjoy it as a little time capsule of innocence before that all happened. But just a full warning there. Our opinions on this whole thing have very much changed. But still, I want to let you guys hear what we thought prior to the recent, let's still technically allegations, but the recent activity surrounding things like WATA games. But let's move on to our first actual subject here, and that, Abdullah, that's the one you picked. Now, I'm just going to read what you wrote, and then I mean, obviously you can elaborate, but basically you said, what are the positives and negatives of grading games, and how does it affect the market? So before we specifically dive into that, I just want to pitch the idea for those who are unaware. If you guys don't know, there is this concept of companies like WATA, Go Collect, VGA, where they basically take like sealed condition games that are in immaculate condition, presumably, and they more or less seal them up and they give them a score out of 10. Now, theoretically, you can do that, as I understand it, with any game. They can rate it, but the whole idea is there's a service that basically takes games and grades them based on their condition. And that's really the whole concept. And I assume the reason, Abdullah, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you wanted to talk about this is because as of late, there's been a couple of games that have gone through those services that sold like for crazy numbers. Like like what was it, Mario 3 for NES sold. Well, I will get to that. We'll get to that. That one, Mario 3 for NES sold for like 500,000, and now a sealed copy of Super Mario 64 sold for like $1.5 million or something like that. I assume that's why you brought it up.
Yes, that's kind of. I've always had this topic in mind, honestly, about grading games. But that news kind of sparked it, back in. I would say. So I got to thinking about it a lot. So I thought maybe it'll be a nice subject to discuss.
I agree with you, and so basically, if I interpret it correctly, like you just want to discuss like what is the point of this? Is there good? What's the bad? Is like
yeah, because. Exactly, because everything there's positives and negatives, and in general, how does that affect the market?
Okay, so my take on this is that those things, the services we just mentioned, I would say are generally positive in the sense that I'll make the case that they do historical preservation. Set aside the money, we'll get to that, but they do historical preservation in the sense that there are only so many of these original copies ever produced. Even though we might say like, oh yeah, there was a bajillion copies of Super Mario 64, yes, but there's only so many copies that are still sealed today, and even less of them that would be in like, shall we say, museum quality condition. So in a sense, they are creating that for us, a potential future archive where generations can see exactly what this big game that was special to people in 96 or whatever, what it looked like originally in immaculate condition for all time, if you will. I like that aspect of it. Also, it is worth noting that it is a volunteer service. Like, it's a company, you're paying for a service to give you a score on something. You don't have to do this. Nobody has to do this. It's just an optional thing. So I overall kind of like it. Where I dislike it, if you will, is kind of the joke aspect of it. The idea that there's so many games that are getting really expensive or people are thinking are really expensive because of these grading systems. Like when the headline came out that they sold a copy of Super Mario 64 for $1.5 million, that really kind of messed with everybody. And among guys like myself and who are regularly in these like retro gaming communities and so on and so forth, it was just kind of like a big punchline. Like, did you hear about that? Does anybody really do that? Blah blah blah. Because none of us would ever do that, and I don't think there's very many of us that even could afford to do something like that. But it's just kind of a weird thing that it somewhat has an effect on the market. But I'll also say this: it's the same market that buys like expensive paintings and like sealed bottles of wine from like 1602 or something. It's not the same normal video game market. It's just that we're reacting to it like it is because we're used to being in the video game market. It's not really the same thing. So aside from that, I don't really see too many negatives of this whole concept. How about you?
All right, so it's very interesting when you discuss the graded games, because some people seem to be completely with it and some people seem to be completely against it. And when I say against it, it's they're opposing it to a point where they want to stop it. I've actually spoken to a few collectors, and their intake on it is really interesting. And honestly, I cannot say that what they said is correct or incorrect. It's an opinion in the end. But I spoke to one of my very good friends who was a collector, and his intake was interesting. You have different aspects, different sides when you see this grading games. If you look at it from a business side, and if you look at it from the collector side, and if you look at it from the preservation side, and that's actually the side you mentioned, which is preservation.
Yeah.
So as in terms of preservation, when you grade and you use that as take the extra mile, I guess, and take this rare game and make somebody grade it, and they check it, and they check if something is fake or not, and they do all of these things, and they give you. And actually, I've checked out these websites along with my friend as well. We checked out the website, and it's actually a strong system. I wouldn't call it strong. I would just say the system is detailed. You could ask for a report about it and things like that. So they do take it seriously. And when it comes from a preservation side, it's really good. But the thing is, the problem with this, I would say, is when you look at it from the business side, there are those people who would grade games, common games, and the price for those games would just skyrocket just because they're graded. I'm trying to recall an example, but it's crazy. Sometimes you would see a game that's a regular game you could buy for an average price, and once it's just sealed and or graded, this price rockets to more than $400, or sometimes even $1,000 more than what you would buy it for a regular sealed copy. So I think that's way too much. So that's looking at it from a business side. If you sell it, of course, you're making profit.
Just a point of clarification on what you're saying. You're saying specifically the copy that has been graded is the one that goes up, not like every copy of that game as a result of a different copy being graded.
Yeah, so they grade what I'm referring to is the regular copy of the game that's just being graded.
Yeah, so once they grade that particular copy, let's say we're holding a copy of a game in our hand, and then we get that copy graded. Okay, the price of that particular copy is now more valuable, but it doesn't mean the copy that isn't graded, that's just sitting on a store shelf, they're like, oh, we better compete with the graded prices. I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I've seen, but of course I've not seen I've not checked out a lot of games, but a huge amount. But from what I saw and the examples I've made, I've seen, it seems that that's a trend that's going on, that people sometimes grade games just to get the money from it. So that's looking at it from a business side.
Sure.
Looking at it from a collector's side, if you're a collector who wants to collect games for playing games, then graded games are not your way to go. But if you're a collector who's yeah, because it doesn't make sense. But if you're a collector who likes to play, who has a video game preservation in mind, which is an example that you mentioned, that's actually the major topic I wanted to mention as well. If you're looking at it from that angle, yes, it's good. But I would say that it's crazy to go ahead and grade a Mario Duck Hunt, for example, copy, and just increase the price a whole ton for something like that. Because it's not the game that you would want to preserve. It's not that kind of game that should be preserved, because it's very common, and I would not do that. But if I go and preserve a game that's very rare, and there are lots of examples, well, that I find kind of a value in grading it. So that's my point. The three aspects of grading.
Sure, and I think that's pretty good. But the one counter I'm going to throw in there is kind of like what I was saying before. You have to remember that I kind of think graded games are a different market. They're not really guys like us who are looking to collect them, to play them, or collect them as almost like you would collect trading cards or something. Like, it's just kind of the fun of collecting stuff. I mean, that's a common thing in our community, is people like the hunt, but it also has to be like financially viable. The people who are buying graded games are on a different level. They're like I was saying, they're the guys who are buying old bottles of wine from 400 years ago. They're the guys who are buying paintings. They're buying them as cultural artifacts, even if it is a common game. The whole idea is, if you get it graded and it's like a good score, presumably, then you're sitting on something that, as long as you don't destroy its case or whatever, will always be in that condition. And it's just like having, that's like a different, like, how do we put this? That's like advancing and leveling up in your collector game, is being like, no, I don't just collect games. I don't just collect complete copies. I don't just collect sealed copies. I only collect graded copies.
That needs a whole budget by itself.
Right, right, and that's like the Neo Geo crowd. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's a different mindset, and the truth is, there's just not many of those people. But I gotta say, more power to them if they got the money and they want to do that. Like, I the biggest benefit, as I said before, in my mind, is the historical preservation side of it.
Yeah, that's the
But
most important part.
yeah, but I can't say I fault them. Like when I was a kid, I used to collect a lot of basketball cards because I grew up in in Chicago in the 1990s in the Michael Jordan era. So basketball was a big thing, right? So trading cards were a big thing, and all of us as kids, we could only afford like the little, normal cards, whatever. But you would go into these card shops, and they would have like the Michael Jordan rookie card, behind glass under like 3 layers of plastic, and they're like, this card is a special one, this is worth thousands of dollars, whatever, and you just dream about owning it, but you can never really have it. And I kind of feel like it's that same mentality, but now applied to video games. Like when that trading card came out, it was pennies, much like video games. When a Super Mario 64 came out in '96, you could have bought a brand new sealed copy at a store for whatever it was, $60-$70 at the time, and if you took good enough care of it, that would have been your investment to get your magical $1.5 million, provided that the case was flawless, whatever. It's just how these things go. And I gotta say, I don't, aside from it having this maybe economic divide, I don't see a whole lot of negatives to it, but it seems like the one thing we definitely agree on as far as the negatives is it does have an economic impact that is fundamentally negative for the normal collecting market. But
Yes.
I think you got to just try and detach yourself from it entirely, and say, like, that ain't even our market. Like, the number of video game conventions I've been to where people sell used games and whatever, I've only seen one show that routinely brings VGA graded stuff. And even then, like, the cap is like $3,000, $3,000 at the time anyway, for like a sealed copy of Rule of Rose, which now probably would be more reasonable because that game's psychotic. But that, I don't know. I like the idea that this exists for history purposes, but I also know that I'm not forced to buy it. And I think the
Yes.
funniest thing about all of this, though, is if you look at it, so that copy of Super Mario 64 we keep talking about is now the highest selling, the most valuable single video game purchase in history by a landslide. And to think, it's
Yes.
kind of funny. Only, what was it, a year and a half ago, the Nintendo PlayStation prototype had that record at $334,000. I mean, that's like more than 3 times how much that thing went for.
It's a big
Like, what a
difference there.
year. It is. And like, what a year, man. Like, the pandemic really screwed the entire market up. Although to whoever actually bought that copy of Super Mario 64, like, dude, join the Patreon, because clearly you have stupid money. But it's like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
all yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And to wrap it up, because of the time, I think we're on the same page here. When you look at it from preservation side, yes, that's really good. But you look at it from a economic side, it has somewhat of a negative aspect, because you see that sometimes people would say, well, if it's graded, it's worth this much. They may use that by itself as a way to think about this. For example, a game does cost some amount, and if it's graded, it's 1,000 more. If somebody looks into the graded one, he would just may think that, well, the actual game costs maybe $200 less, and if this trend keeps following, the game would skyrocket in price just because of it being graded. I hope you get my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a negative part. But to me, I would say that personally, I own a single graded game. My whole collection, I own one graded game, by the way.
What game is it?
It's Panzer Dragoon Saga for the Saturn.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
Yeah. So
What?
yeah, that's.
Can I
Yep.
ask, what did you pay for it?
Well, I actually, yeah, I'm fine disclosing the price. So you know me, I live overseas. So my only way was getting it through eBay.
Yeah.
So it's Yeah, so I actually paid
Feel
around,
free to, if you don't want to tell, that's fine.
Yeah, I paid actually a heavy amount for it. I saved up, you may not believe it, for a whole year to buy it. I bought it during my early college days, so it costs around $800 or something like that. So I bought it for
800
that.
for PDS is not bad,
Yeah.
which is sad.
It's not, but now of course it's definitely gotten higher in price. It's around $800 something, and I believe that's much. If my memory serves me correctly, I guess it's around 800. It definitely was not 1,000. That's something I'm almost sure about. I have to recall because I bought it around maybe 2-3 years ago or something.
So, just so I'm clear, 2 or 3 years ago, you bought a VGA graded copy.
No, water grade. Water graded.
Water grade. Sorry, So is it sealed?
No, it's not sealed. It's water graded.
So you bought a water graded PDS for $800 or so a couple of years ago. So if you want to feel better about that purchase, I was at a convention a few weeks ago in Chicago called Video Game Summit, and there was one guy selling a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga. It was not graded. It was complete. It was in good shape, but it was just a normal copy. And he was asking $13.50 for it.
Oh.
And I was just like laughing internally because I'm like, there's no way. And at one point, as I'm wandering around, a different guy walks over and notices it, and he says, the PDS, Panzer Dragoon Saga, he's like, would you take $12.80, which was an oddly specific negotiation? And the guy said yes. So I saw it in real time, a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga get bought for $1,280 at that show.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's even higher because I'm trying to factor in shipping and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if I recall, maybe the total did reach around 1,000 something if shipping was involved, because it's kind of blurry in my head. But for sure it was not 1,300. Or
and that's all my point is that you compared to that already got a better deal, which is kind of insane. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that maybe the guy who, the seller, actually ended up calling me. Of course, I was charged because it was an overseas call. So I was, so the guy, once I bought it, the guy actually called me. He said, "Are you serious with buying this?" I told him, "Yeah, definitely. Why would I buy it now? I paid in full. I've been saving up for a year to buy. I had Panzer Dragoon in my head for a year. I said I'm getting that game because I happen to like any console that fails. So the Saturn is one of those consoles. I like the Wii U, for example. I haven't have
Casio Loopy Master Race.
Yeah. So the guy actually called me, and up until this moment I thought I paid a regular price, but from what you gave me right now, it seems that I got a really good deal on that one, and it's water graded too. So that's a bonus.
Yeah. I don't think anybody can beat my story of how I got Panzer Dragoon Saga. Did I ever tell you this?
Maybe
I
you
included
mentioned it in a video before or something.
I did. I put it in a video oh no, I don't blame you. I put it in a video like 7 years ago. So this is just a side story before we move on. Like in 2014, I got really into 2013 and 2014. I got really into collecting the Saturn for a minute because it was a friend basically said to me, "Hey man, it's like now or never for Saturn. You either do it or it's over." And I remember finding this one store, and they had I picked up something like 88 games from them. I even did a video about that specifically. So I was in full Saturn mode, and I was like, man, the Panzer Dragoon games weren't part of that. But I remember being like, man, I would just love to have those games like anyone would. And I just started perusing eBay and just checking out. And then at one point I found a listing for a thing, it was all lowercase, and it just said Panzer Dragon games. Dragon, not Dragoon, Dragon. And it was just 3 words. It wasn't, I think it was like Sega CD Panzer Dragon games or something. Like the guy didn't have the correct information in the listing, you know what I mean? And I remember clicking on it. It had a box complete copy Panzer Dragoon 1, box complete copy Panzer Dragoon 2, and box complete copy Panzer Dragoon Saga. All 3 of them, the whole trilogy for the Saturn, on eBay in 2014 as a buy it now with free shipping for $80. And I was like, there's no way this is real. So there's no way this is real. So I'm like reading his description to be like, is this a photo? Is he sending me a photo of the games? You know what I mean? Like
Because they
like some
play on
fake
that
thing or whatever. And I was like, but no, he said all games complete, good condition for Sega. You know what I mean? Like the guy had no idea what he had.
Yeah, because
and so
from the name you could tell it, the way he listed it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hit buy it now. I paid for it, and I'm like, and I remember thinking like, I probably just threw away $80 on a guy who's never going to send me anything or something. But they showed up, and I remember opening the box and just being like, oh my God, they're here. And I looked through them and be like, are they burned CDs? Are they reproductions? Or no, 100% legit. Just the guy clearly somehow got these, probably from like an estate sale or something. I have no idea, but they're mine, and I still have them over there, just sitting there, great condition. They've got like a black towel around them to prevent any sort of sun damage or anything. Like they're safe. You know what I mean? Like
for $80.
So, for $80 in 24, I mean, even in 2014, Panzer Dragoon Saga was selling for like $500, $600.
Yeah, that's my point.
So I included that in a video at the time. I think it was a playload. It's somewhere in there. But that was how I got it. But I'm like the freak example. All I'm trying to say to you, man, is you got a good deal on that game comparatively. I saw with my own eyes only a couple weeks ago a dude buy it for $1,280, and it was not water graded.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, to me, because again, if I actually do get to know how much I bought it for, definitely with shipping and everything, $1,300 would be my maximum amount I've paid from it going from the US up to Dubai here. And here they take there's some sometimes there's taxes and whatever. So I'm talking about the whole
import duties or whatever.
I mean. So the whole thing, I'm pretty sure, was nowhere. $1,350. That's the maximum. I'm sure. Yeah. Pretty sure I paid. So I guess that's a really good deal from what I heard, but not like your crazy story, of course.
Yeah, well, sorry about that, but but at least I was trying to make you feel a little better before ruining your day. But compliment sandwich. But anyway, so but to wrap up this particular subject, I overall, I think the whole concept of those grading, it's nothing I would ever get into, but I think it's a generally positive concept, and I think the negatives it has is really affects a very minor amount of people, but those same amount of people are the ones that are probably going in and being like, I'm here for that specifically. I don't doubt there's going to be some cases where someone sees, like, you're going to inevitably see that, oh, okay, generic guy on the internet has Super Mario 64. He sees a story where the headline says, Super Mario 64 sells for $1.5 million. So he's like, wow, I have that. And he tries to sell it for like $1 million. And it's like, dude, it's like a $70 game. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you're gonna get that, but that's also just like funny. That's the worst that it can happen to guys like us, is that some of the, shall we say, noobs are going to try and like jack up their prices, which I guess you can argue has overall impacts on the market, but welcome to capitalism, man. That's just what happens.
Yeah, so again, I agree with what you said. Then there's a lot to speak about. There's, for example, some people would say that shipping it to, do you trust yourself shipping it to the company or whatever? There's lots of aspects that could be discussed here, but I would say the final conclusion is that, almost like yours. It's more towards the positive side, but economically it has a lot of issues. So I believe my final verdict, at least from my opinion, would be that great games that are significantly rare, like, for example, Panzer Dragoon Saga, those are the games I would say that you think about grading those, and grading in terms of those games. But generic games being graded is going to have I wouldn't say heavily, but it has a negative impact on the market.
You said something there that made me think. You were mentioning shipping the games. So it's funny. I have a friend who's in this exact situation. So he has a sealed, pretty much immaculate copy of Ogre Battle 64, which apparently is quite rare. I'm not huge into like the value of sealed games, especially RPGs, whatever. But he keeps telling me like, yeah, this is like super valuable. I want to send it off to be graded. But he's concerned that shipping it in of itself is dangerous because, you know, you're essentially relying on a postal service, and it has to basically be in a box that gets tossed around. So there's the risk of it getting destroyed or damaged, thus degrading, which is ironic because the whole reason you're doing it is to preserve it. So that's why he hasn't done it. And it's one of those things where, like, how many people are thinking about it that way? And if you are thinking about it that way, what's the solution? Like, do you have to get on a plane and fly it there yourself? Which even that also, you know, increases the risk of something happening to it as opposed to it staying on your shelf. And then, of course, if you are the type of person who's doing that, you probably have some money to burn because you're spending, you know, money on flights for that. But I don't know. It's an interesting philosophy, and I don't know anybody who does that personally. It would be very interesting to interview someone like that who's like, yeah, I have a collection of games that I want graded, and here's the logistics of how I do it. You know, like, do I send them in like a super hard crate that's like everything is super protected, or do I personally fly things there? Like, then we were talking briefly, I know we've been on this for a while, but like the Nintendo PlayStation prototype, like they weren't, when they did that, Terry, who was the previous owner of it, he had like a custom mold foam thing made up just for the prototype, and then that was fitted into a special suitcase that had a super hard shell, and he always used it as a carry-on, and he personally flew it to every single destination, even when he was selling it, because there was no way they were going to risk shipping it. And, you know, he used to tell me stories that the biggest problem with doing that is a lot of the time when you would put it through the airport security, like, screener, and you would eventually find a TSA agent who looked at it and knew what it was and wanted to see it, so they would ask to open the bag. And he's like, that was the worst part about it. But aside from that, you know, I guess this is an interesting subject, but it requires that we have someone who does this so we can get yet another angle. But from I'm going to say from our more casual perspective, mostly overall positive experience, little bit of negative on its potential economic impacts, but I think we agree that it's a mostly positive thing.
Pretty much.
Great. Well, thank you for that subject. Dude, we went on that for a half hour. We're pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good subject. You know, it's meaty when you can do that, which is good because the stuff I came up with was not nearly as good. Our next subject is something I saw that on a story about, and I just thought it was kind of weird. So I guess it was going to be this month or something. McDonald's Australia decided to do a competition where they were going to give out PS5 controllers that were themed with like McDonald's artwork. So it was going to have like part of a hamburger and some fries and the logo and all this sort of stuff like all over the controller. For those watching this, I'll put a photo of it up. Kind of hideous controller, but at the same time, that's kind of what makes it awesome, is like that they just went for it. Yeah. Anyway, so they did this, they were doing this whole thing, they had this all set up, and I guess they never bothered to talk to Sony about this first. And so Sony was like, you can't do that. So they have since blocked this whole competition, and it's not going to exist. So
yeah, I guess looked it up because first time I hear about it.
Right, so you see this controller? It's really weird looking.
It's not pleasant to look at. It's weird.
Yeah, it isn't, but it's just kind of funny. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is just like, how does that happen? Like, how does those are two of the biggest companies in the world. Like, how does McDonald's sit down and say like, hey, we're gonna do this whole thing, but we never checked in with Sony on that? And at the same time, Sony couldn't, even if you were like, hey, what the hell? Couldn't you have like, I don't know, messaged them privately and been like, all right, this is fine, but let's cut a deal here. We don't want to screw up your plan, because it's basically free promotion for both sides. And the fact that they just outright blocked it is weird to me. And both sides of it is weird. It just seems like general incompetence all around. And the people who really lose are all these like fans who thought it would have been awesome to have this controller.
Yeah.
And then expanding on that, it really just made me think about like the history of, you know, fast food chains and video games. Like, yeah, I like the McDonald's Treasureland Adventure game for the Genesis, or those Burger King games that used to come out. I think in my PSX video recently, I showed that actually funny. This is ironic. There was a Sony PS2 Happy Meal disc that was a pack-in Japan exclusively. I don't know what it is. Probably because I grew up fat and I still am. I just have this affinity for like the idea of fast food chains having video game stuff. And the reason I brought this up is twofold. One, because I know you're obviously not from Australia, but you are from yet another country, and I just thought it'd be interesting to see, do you guys ever see weird promotional stuff like this? And secondly, do you have any sort of, is there a similar history there, like with video games and like fast food chain crossover?
All right. First of all,
and I guess, what do you think about this story specifically?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Very interesting question. Okay. By the way, yeah, about the link you said, because of fast food chains and video games, I have that too, and I am as well fat and still am. All right. So,
you're probably like
gamer of
you're
my
probably like
style
healthy
would be,
fat.
Yeah.
You're probably healthy fat. You don't know what real fat is. You have to come to my country and you'll know what real fat is. Anyway, sorry.
All right.
You're like, oh man, I'm slightly out of shape.
That connection with fast food chains and video games. I didn't see something as crazy as this controller, and I'd like to make a point here about this controller. And I don't know if you'll agree with it or not, but if this controller, if it was actually made and it gets leaked out, I don't know how much it'll go for. By the way, for price, it's gonna be crazy, I guess. The unreleased or the blocked controller from Australia or whatever. So I expect something like that if it's ever leaked out or something, that it's gonna go crazy. Maybe beat that $1.5 million mark.
The banned Australian McDonald's PS5 controller. You can't have it, so it's worth $10 million. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
God, you're right. That's exactly what would happen.
That's how maybe that's how it's gonna be, but I do remember these promotional toys, those that come with the Happy Meal. I do remember them here for a while. As a Sonic fan, I remember when Sonic Heroes, I think it was during the Sonic Heroes time where they had it, and but yeah, I remember those being sold here, pretty much the same as what it was sold in the US. We had these, I don't know what you call them. Those games, I don't know what they're called.
The little portable things?
What is it?
The little portable, like, game, like,
things
they were giving out at McDonald's?
Yeah,
I still have those.
Yeah, those are the ones that I remember being sold here, themed, for a while. Recently, I don't know how long it was, maybe a year ago or something. I don't know. There was Mario themed stuff, and yeah, that's what I remember. So usually, whatever trend is going on worldwide with the movies or video games, it's there. So it's pretty much similar here. I do not recall specific video game related fast food stuff here. It's not that. I guess it's pretty much derivative from what you guys get. Maybe sometimes they add their own touch, but I don't think it's about video games. If we can talk about other aspects of the restaurant that are specific here, but that's not a video game discussion.
Okay. So, but what do you think about this story specifically? But the idea that these two were like, just wait a minute, what? We didn't even talk about this beforehand.
It's kind of surprising, as you said. They're two big companies, and why would they would do something like that? It's pretty odd. Maybe there's something else that we don't know, but it's very strange why two really big companies in their respective fields would not talk about this. So suddenly McDonald's goes and does it, and then the other one says, "No, you can't do that. We're not playing games here." I don't know. It's very strange. It's a rather funny story too.
All right, so there's a thing about humans that's weird. Like, we all tend to believe that companies and all these, everybody has this plan and everybody's has some sort of agenda. And in a sense, you can argue that would be a darkness, an evil, if you will. But it's funny because human beings mostly just do stupid things, and that's how stuff like this happens. So there's a great little quote that basically says, like, never attribute to malice what you can credit to incompetence. Meaning it's not likely McDonald's tried to get away with stealing from Sony and making more money, without paying a royalty. It was more like McDonald's like, oh shit, like we just forgot, you know what I mean? Like it's the latter is vastly more likely, and like we all do that, yet we all also simultaneously believe, well, yeah, I know I don't know what I'm doing, but clearly other people in the world know what they're doing. And I don't know, humans are funny. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about this story, is that it's a weird one, and you are totally right, and I did not think about that at all. If there are actually like final units of this in the world somewhere, and they're probably sitting in some warehouse at McDonald's or something, if those get out, those will be like ungodly expensive. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with some of these, like in Japan there was a McDonald's 3DS or DS that was a training cartridge. Like, it was just literally how to train their staff, and some of those cartridges are just like some of the most valuable content out there. And
I think I heard about that.
Yeah, and so this would be kind of in that vein potentially. So yeah, now that's something you'd want to get, water graded.
But you'd get water graded, but you'd not sell for 10 million. That's for sure. There's one point I wanted to check, because when you told me about this controller, I actually opened up directly online to see how it looks like, and I saw that on the other side there was like an Xbox donut or something.
What? That I did not see.
I just saw.
Wait, you're talking about the Krispy Kreme donut? Are you talking about the 20th anniversary Krispy Kreme donut?
Well, the story's about it, but I actually just saw it like right there. Krispy Kreme.
You're talking
Xbox.
About the 20th anniversary Krispy Kreme Xbox donut. That's a real thing, but I guess it's only in the UK. At least last time I read about it. So it's just the UK has that, which is surprising because, like, I live in the fat country. Okay, Krispy Kreme is like from here. I don't understand why we don't have that. But then I wouldn't eat it anyway, so I don't really care. But it's just, that's another one of those examples of I like regional differences.
Preserve it, then go sell it for $2 million.
Yeah. Put the donut behind glass. Get the donut water graded. Because McDonald's food never breaks down, so maybe they can make a Krispy Kreme donut that never does. And then you can have the Xbox donut 20th anniversary donut on the 40th anniversary. We can all see it. But yeah, jokes aside, I think we've said everything we need to say about this.
All right. Yes.
So the next subject up, unless you have anything else about this.
I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, just an interesting topic to discuss. There's lots to talk about. Such crazy things obviously happened with other things, but I guess this is pretty much what we have.
Yeah. Well, if you ever hear about one that comes out in the UAE that's just like, hey man, for some reason Burger King is like releasing their own video game exclusively in their stores or something, which actually now that I was making that as a joke, but then I realized they did that here.
Well,
they did
something like that.
They did three exclusive. They did three
again.
exclusive Burger King games for the Xbox 360 in like 2006. I was trying to make like what is the dumbest example, and then I forgot they did that 3 times. Okay, never mind. If they ever do that, that'll be fun. I'll want to get my hands on that. But anyways, never mind. Let's just move on to the next subject.
All right.
So the next one up is probably going to be a little limited, at least on my end, because I'm doing a video about this, or I've already done it, depending on when you're listening to this. The Steam Deck by Valve. My whole video is going to be kind of about like what can we realistically expect from this, but I want to bounce this concept off of someone else, and obviously that's going to end up being you, Abdullah. So
right,
the Steam Deck. Do you play games on PC? I don't even remember.
Yeah. So when I didn't really know a lot about it. I just heard about it in general, the Steam Deck. But I talked to one of my good friends, one of my close ones, and he's more interested towards these kinds of PC and whatever. He's more invested in it than I am. He's more of a console gamer, of course, but he's just knows more. And he gave me interesting comments, and we had a good discussion. So I'm gonna mention those. But before that, answering your question, I'm not really allowed into PC gaming. It's not my thing. I'm mostly a console gamer. But on Steam, I would just download these games that I just know. I'm not exclusively there on PC, and whenever I play on PC, have to use a controller.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, and that makes you more of a PC gamer than I'm ever going to be, because I'm going down with the ship as far as consoles go. But the Steam Deck, I don't think is anything that anybody out here probably doesn't know the basics of. But in case you did actually miss it, it is a portable platform being created by Valve that essentially lets you incorporate Steam, their service, onto the hardware. And there will have a portable edition. Yeah, like. Again, I have a whole video coming up about like pros and cons and all that sort of stuff, so you can wait for that. But really, I was just curious, Abdullah, like, is this something you want? Is this something you would get, or are you kind of like, I don't care?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic. Something when I spoke with my friend about it. So I would say that for myself, it's gonna be interesting to have it. Because you see, if you think about a portable PC, you would think a laptop, but this just takes the gaming aspect more and more into it. And the fact that you can play a good amount of games on it, Steam games on it, and it's on the go, makes it interesting to me because of my lifestyle. So what we ended up saying is that it really depends on your lifestyle, because if you're a person who moves a lot or has a job, or your kind of life is more on the go, and you're a PC person, then this kind of device would be really suitable for you. But what I would say, I've read a little bit about it. As I told, I'm not really invested a lot into PC gaming and what's related to it, but from what I know is that it's a heavier unit than the Switch, of course. It's of course
yeah, I think it's like a pound heavier.
Yeah, it's heavier. That's what I saw a video that compared it to the Game Gear or something, but I'm not really aware of that. And its battery life is not like the Switch, of course. It's less, from what I read.
Yeah, I think the Switch, they're saying, is the new one anyway, is going to be like, what is it, 4 to 10 hours or something, depending on how you use it, and this is like 2 to 4.
Yeah, so it's not a much, but it's definitely more powerful, I guess, in terms of the hardware. But
yeah.
But overall, my comment of it, if I'm not mistaken, there was something called the Steam Box that was released right before.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I said the same thing in the video, and I called it the Steam Box too, not even knowing they had renamed it the Steam Machine.
Ah, okay.
Right, because I've never seen one, and I've never known anybody to have one. Anyway, yeah, that's probably exactly the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing I guess might happen. I guess it has its audience, but it's not really that... I'm not really sure, but I guess I suspect that it might have a similar fate. But otherwise, sometimes things could surprise you, because for myself, if I'm capable, I'd actually buy it. But me buying it would be just for the purpose of having... Because as I told you, I'm a big Sonic fan, so there's lots of Sonic games on Steam that you could buy. So I'd love to have those on the go in one unit. So that'll be a bit of my personal reason. But I wouldn't save money to buy it, honestly. And that's just my opinion. I'm pretty sure it has its audience. Maybe it's going to do better than the Steam Box. Maybe it'll do worse. Maybe the same. Who knows? But overall, I'm not a big fan of the idea from my perspective. I guess because if I want to play PC, I play it on the PC. That's the reason I'm saying it like that. That's my opinion.
So you pretty much echoed everything I said in my video, but in just a much more succinct way. So congratulations, you one-upped me. But yeah, you'll probably have seen that video by the time this is out. But yeah, so if you guys want more details on that, please go watch that video. But in essence, neither of us, I want to make very clear, neither of us are dogging this thing. We're not saying the Steam Deck is bad, just kind of questioning whether or not it really has a chance, and why we think that. And we're both open to the idea that, yeah, it might blow up and be huge. We don't know. but there's a lot of reasons to be like, I don't know if that's gonna work. That's really all we're saying.
Because it's not all about power. Because if you think about power, the PS Vita, for example, didn't do so well when it was compared to 3DS. PS Vita was much more powerful. But in the end, it's not really lots of aspects.
Here's the thing. To agree with you on that, historically speaking, the most powerful console almost never wins in any generation. It's very rare. It's one of those things people like to argue about, but that doesn't necessarily get results. If you look at this past generation, the 8th gen was a little weird because we had mid console upgrades, so that the Xbox One X was the most powerful. It did not win. But you can basically debate if you count their launch versions, the PS4 would be the more powerful console, and it did win, unless you include the Nintendo Switch, I assume is going to eventually beat out the PS4. So that one's still kind of, the jury's still out.
But what about older generations? I guess.
Right. Go even to the 7th gen. Go to the 7th gen. Yeah. What was the winner? The Nintendo Wii was the winner.
The Wii, the Wii. Yeah, I'm thinking about
lowest of all of them.
Actually, it's correct.
Go to the 6th gen. What was the winner? The PS2. The GameCube and the Xbox were more capable. Dreamcast in some ways was, but the other two indisputably. PS2 still wins. Go before that, the most powerful console was the Apple Pippin. Well, that sure as shit didn't win. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying. Like, you go as far back as you want most of the time. I think that you go to the 4th gen. The Neo Geo AES was the most capable, but the Super Nintendo won.
Yeah, but when you say 4th generation, you just think of Genesis and SNES.
Yeah, but that's unfair because especially if you were to ask someone Japanese, they'd be like, "Well, what about the PC Engine?" You know what I mean? Like, and that was a super pop. Like the Mega Drive barely even existed there. So it depends on what country you're in. But overall, if you look at any single generation,
you're right.
The most powerful console almost never wins.
It's not the most powerful one. It's never really.
Exactly. The 3rd gen. NES and Famicom won, but the Sega Master System by far was more capable. It's just that's how it goes. The 2nd gen Atari 2600 won, and yet even Atari's own 5200, which was vastly more capable, lost to itself. You know what I mean? It's just that always happens. So the Steam Deck being more capable than the Switch is one of those things where on paper that's the same argument we've heard over and over again. The Game Gear will kill the Game Boy because it's got a better screen and it's got more colors and blah, or a color at all. Didn't work. The PSP is going to kill the DS. Didn't. The Vita is going to kill the 3DS. Didn't. Etc.
Lots of other factors you need to consider.
Sure, but all I'm saying is it's not impossible, but it's also not likely. That's all we're saying is that the Steam Deck might be a juggernaut success. It might run away with the show, but it also might do nothing. Steam's or Valve's only other, attempt in the non-PC market was an outright flop. Like, you and I both didn't even know what it's actually called. We've been calling it the Steam Box. In reality, it was always the Steam Machine. And did you even know they discontinued it like 2 years ago?
I had no idea. As I told you, the only thing I know is that I think there was something called the Steam Box. That's all I remember.
Yeah. So I
didn't even know that it was released.
I had to do exactly. I had to do a little research on the Steam Machine because in preparation for the video. And there was something like 11 different models of the Steam Machine released, and I've never seen any of them.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was released in 2015. I just looked it up. I didn't even realize it was released that long ago. Exactly
my point. No one remembers because no one's ever seen one. This is coming from a guy who owns a Casio Loopy and an Apple Pippin. I've never seen a Steam Machine. Okay? That's all I'm saying. And I didn't even know the name of it. That tells you a lot.
That's the Pippin of this generation, probably.
It really is. And yet there's multiple models, and they're all basically junk because they're entirely digital. Like, I'm assuming they still can connect to Steam servers and whatever, but they're not technically supported in any way. And since I've never even seen one, I don't know what that really means. And I'm not saying that the Steam Deck will fail on that basis alone. All I'm saying is that I don't really have high expectations for this thing. But
but it may prove otherwise.
I elaborate on all this in my video, so I'll just be a broken record here. But that's why I wanted more of your perspective.
Which turned out to be very similar to your perspective.
There you go. All right, well then that's it for that particular subject. So at this point, we're pretty much going to say goodbye, and I'm going to do a round of shout outs. So Abdullah, as always, I want to say thank you for joining us today, and suck it, Rob, for not being here and having a life and being busy and stuff. You jerk. Anything you want to say to the folks?
To everyone, I hope they enjoyed the podcast. And next time, Rob's going to be here, and so we're going to have a third opinion. Although it's not really, Rob in the end, but it's kind of I missed Rob, honestly. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. So his intake usually on things, jokes aside, is very interesting. So hopefully he'll be there next month. And I would love to know his intake on what we said.
Definitely. I think he would have been very interesting about the VGA stuff. Or sorry, go ahead.
And to everyone who's listening, I hope they enjoyed this, and I hope that you guys, I hope that what we said has helped you in some sort of way. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed.
All right. Thank you very much, Abdullah, for joining us. Let me do a quick... All right, so I'm going to do a quick round of shout-outs here. All the following people are Patreon backers, and they are at the level in which they get a shout-out. We've got Joseph Tamburino, Julian Espinoza, Leafy Poo, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner. Once again, that is Joseph Tamburino, Julian Espinoza, Leafy Poo, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, Trey Wagner, and once again, thank you to Abdullah, of course, for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here, and thanks everyone for listening.
Welcome, Keith. You are now back on the podcast. What's up, man?
Actually, Keith's not here for you. Helly, how you doing? I'm Naughty McJohnson, and I am the new CEO of Konami. So Keith allowed me to come onto this podcast and talk to you about our brand new things for Konami coming out here. Now, I've taken over the entire company of Konami, so they all listen to me and do whatever I say. Well, most of the time they can't understand me because they speak a different language, but it's all right. It's okay. So, I want to tell you guys about all the cool games we got coming up here. Now, I talked to the guys at Konami, and I was like, guys, I know where to get the money. I know what to do. Now, think about this. You got a corner of market that nobody else corners. All right? Stick with me, people. The best way to corner a market is go where no one else goes. So, I say we start making NES games again. I'm talking the Nintendo Entertainment System. We start making... I'm not joking. We start making cartridges again. It's going to be brilliant. And I've got a list of brand new cartridge games for you. Oh, it's based off RIPs. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. The very first game coming up is a wonderful game. You guys all remember Contra? You remember Contra, don't you, Adam?
Yeah. I didn't realize I'd accidentally called the wrong person, but all right, screw Keith. Who's this? Tell me more about Konami. What's up? I didn't realize we accidentally got the boss of Konami over here.
It's okay. It's all right. Keith allowed me to take this time off. I kind of gave him a little bit of money here and there and a trip to the bar. A strip bar, that is. So, it's okay. He allowed me to come on to here. I'm sorry, Adam, to bum rush you, but I'm really excited about these new games I got you for you. So you remember Contra, don't you? It's a very, very big hit for us on Konami.
I do. What do I call you? Mr. Konami?
You can call me Mr. Konami if you like. I do like that sound. Mr. Konami.
Mr. Konami, yes, I do remember Contra, sir, yes.
Yes, sir. Now, I got a great idea. We're going to be making a brand new game. Stick with me now. It's called Contraception. All right? We're going to be mixing Contra with the story of Inception. It's freaking brilliant. It's genius. I got a script written up. I got posters made up everywhere. Contraception. Be ready for Contraception.
When I heard that, I thought it was going to be a game about like childbirth, conception. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought you were talking about a game called Conception. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's genius. I like that. Yeah.
Man,
also, I also got one other one here after that. It's actually called Super Controversy. Right? It's controversy going on. So we got some controversy. Trust me, it'll work out. The people who make games, they'll figure it out. All right. Now.
Well, what's the controversy?
Oh, yes. The controversy will be if this game comes or does not come out. That's a controversy.
Okay. Is it going to get delayed and need patches?
I don't really know what a patch is. I kind of let the boys over in the programming department deal with that. I'm more of a big idea guy. You know what I'm saying?
But what's your idea? You're going to have a game come out that is just broken? Is that your idea? And then you want controversy around it?
Oh, that's a good idea. We break the game automatically when it comes out, and then they have to give us more money to fix the game. Oh, this is genius. I love this idea. It's like, who has come up with this idea yet?
What have I done?
Idea.
What have I done?
All right. Okay. That's enough with Contra. But one other property I definitely want to go back to. I got to go back to Castlevania. All right? So, I got a sequel to my favorite Castlevania game. My favorite Castlevania game of all time is Simon's Quest, right? So, here's what we call the sequel. We call it Simon's Quests with emphasis on the S on the end because he's going to be going in more quests. So, it's Simon Quests, and he quests around whipping things and whatnot. I mean, you can't go wrong with this. It's $1 million idea. Oh, my goodness.
No. I mean, well, if that was the case, the S should be a dollar symbol, and it should be like Simon Questions, and it's just like a trivia game where you charge money about Castlevania history. Because those are text-based. You don't have to do any real work.
I do like this no work thing. No work, more money. That's the American way. That's what I like to say. Good thinking, Adam. All right,
why
am
I helping you? Why am I helping you?
No, this is genius. Genius idea. I'm definitely not going to give you any money for it, but genius nonetheless. Okay,
I know.
So, another thing here. I was able to talk to a few other guys at another company. I was able to get it rights to one of their characters. So, we're actually going to, a new game, you know, this Metroidvania craze. So, it's actually going to be Metroid versus Vania. Because Metroid versus Castlevania just sounds stupid. So, Metroid versus Vania. It's going to be a fighting game. Simon Belmont versus Samus. I mean, it's going to be brilliant. Brilliant.
Isn't that called Super Smash Brothers already?
Super Smash Brothers. I'll look that one up. I'll see if there's copyright there.
There's already a fighting game with those characters, sir.
Is that why that guy was laughing when he sold me the rights? I mean, I got the rights for Metroid off this guy in the corner named Lou. He said, give him a couple grand and he'll give me the rights to Metroid. He works for Nintendo. He gave me a card and everything, I swear. It's legit.
Okay.
Excellent. Now, everybody get ready, because I've always wanted to bring back this property. This is one of our best properties. It should have always been profitable. Now, you guys all remember Bayou Billy, right? Great property. Now, I want to bring you The Adventures of William Swampy. William Swampy, right? It's almost like a sequel. It's like the son of Bayou Billy, but better, because William Swampy is a classy guy. So instead of walking around kicking people, trying to kick people and whatnot, you actually go around and you discuss things with people. It's more a dialogue game. You start a dialogue with somebody. It's about bringing people together.
Well, William Swampy, is this like the prequel to the Swamp Thing?
Ha! If only.
Is this how he became Swamp Thing?
It's a sequel to Bayou Billy.
Sequel to Bayou Billy that led into becoming a prequel to Swamp Thing.
Yes. Good.
You're going to merge the franchises and create a video game cinematic universe.
But only if I get Zack Snyder. I won't do it without him.
Oh, okay.
The man's a frickin' genius. Wait. What if I do a joint thing with Zack Snyder and Michael Bay? Huh? You can't go wrong. Two directors that know what they're doing.
I was thinking M. Night Shyamalan and Michael Bay, but, you do you.
The more helicopters, the better, I always say. Now,
but what if the helicopters can't actually fly and they run on grass that attacks them? What a twist.
Oh my god, a twist indeed. Actually, only swamp grass though. And the most pure
Exactly.
form of swamp grass is Swamp Thing. So they're trying to get a hold of Swamp Thing, take his DNA, some kind of sciencey exposition. You know, we probably just got a movie right there. I'll make sure to contact.
And it turns out the entire time Swamp Thing wasn't even real.
It's brilliant. Now, no need to worry for all
what
you
am I
sports
doing?
fans that think I'm not going to have a sports game. I'm going to have a sports game. All right? You guys remember Blades of Steel? I'm going to have Fists of Steel. All right? It's all about Fist of Steel. All right? It's like the regular game, but you just fight the whole entire time. Now, the key in the game is fisting your opponent as many times as possible. Yeah, wait a minute. That sounds wrong.
With a steel, like, glove or something?
More like a steel, like kind of wobbly thing. They'll hold it, it'll vibrate
Like
or something, or maybe something like that. Or
like a steel wool thing, like you used to like clean plates and stuff.
oh yeah, or maybe a douche.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
A douche is even better. Then you can say stop.
We
hitting me with that douche.
definitely have
I
a
love
douche
it.
here. Yeah, we definitely have a douche here. Go on.
Also, I've got a lovely game here. It's a takeoff of Double Dribble. It's called Quadruple Dribble. 4 times the ball, 4 times the basket, 100% fun. Can't go wrong with that. What I do is
I don't know.
just add
That's
2 more
giving me
balls to the
Space
game.
Jam 2 vibes.
Genius.
That's giving me Space Jam 2 vibes right there. I don't know about that one.
Oh, have you seen that movie?
Unfortunately, we'll get to that. But
Oh, yeah. Keith's got to talk about that one later. All right. Now, I got one last one for you. This is genius. You can't go wrong with this. This is probably the smartest thing I ever came up with my entire life. It's going to make us billions of dollars. Here we go. Instead of monster in my pocket, we changed it to pocket monsters. Right? How can that go wrong? You go around picking up little monsters. You know, you throw like a cube at them, and they get inside the cube or something, and you train them, and they fight each other. I mean, how can they go wrong? That's a genius idea.
that's already a thing. It's even in that Smash Brothers game we talked about.
What? No, not again.
Is it the same guy in the alley who sold you that one?
Lou, you bastard son of a... Okay,
Well,
all right, dude.
I want to
go
thank
away.
Mr.
Go
Konami
away.
for joining us
Go
here.
away. Dude, sorry, dude. I do apologize for that. That dude was weird. He said he was legit. He had a card. Said Konami on it. Sorry, guys. This is Keith. I apologize for that. Dude was kind of weird, and that whole section was freaking weird. I apologize for that nuttiness. Fucking crazy.
That was
apologize for
Keith's
that.
little bit, everybody, about what happened if he took over Konami, I guess.
Yeah, basically, guys, that's what would happen if a character I decided to create just now took over Konami and decided to make NES games again for some random reason.
Well, I appreciate that. Is that it? Is that all you wanted to talk about?
Oh no, yeah, that was actually I wanted to talk about in general resurrecting franchises, and Konami brought up a lot of things in my brain, and my brain just took off when I first started thinking about it, and so that's the end result of it. So you guys are welcome to that, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I know I didn't say Jaguar at all, so Jaguar, that's for you guys, for the fans. But also, I wanted to bring it up because Konami does have a lot of franchises that I think are dead, and I think need to be resurrected. Castlevania is definitely one of the ones I think needs to be resurrected for sure.
To be fair, Castlevania has been more active lately because Konami has allowed like companies like Limited Run Games to make new sets and re-release stuff. So
they did make the compilation and re-releases.
Yeah,
I just
so
want to go to a nice classic like Castlevania 1, 2, 3, 4 format of Castlevania games. I do not like the Metroidvania genre. I don't like the name of the genre, but I do like some of the games, but not like all of the games.
I mean, it's probably a stupid question, but have you tried things like Bloodstained?
Yeah, very, very good. Very great.
The
game.
original
I own that for the
IP
Switch, and really, really well done. Just a love letter to the genre for sure.
So the original IP is pretty much going to be stuck with Konami indefinitely. I mean, the plus side is they open the door a little bit. If those re-releases and all that stuff actually perform well, I wouldn't put it past them to, open the door to making another game. But you have to understand, like, the talent that made those games is long gone. In fact, the talent that made those games went into making Bloodstained.
Yep.
So short of them bringing that guy back, or the IP changing hands, or just them just finally doing justice to it, I don't know if you're going to get much in the way of out of Konami. I mean, their goals have kind of changed over the years, but at least you'll be getting somewhat a easier way to play Rondo of Blood soon, though.
That's a big thing right there. Rondo of Blood is probably the one I missed the most out on. I've been able to play through it eventually, but I missed that one out entirely when it came out mainly because I didn't have TurboGrafx 16.
Dude, it only came out in Japan.
Really well.
PC Engine CD was the only way to play it. It's like, how hard... I mean, so the fact that they're re-releasing it all on TurboGrafx CD, which is still not exactly a big crowd, but the fact that that's getting another print run and all that stuff, that's great, and that'll probably realistically mean it gets, released to more modern platforms as well. There was like this one Castlevania game that nobody ever really got to enjoy. That's great. But I mean, I hate to play like the bad guy here, but the Konami that created those type of games doesn't really exist anymore, and they haven't really gone through the renaissance. They might. Sega did. There was that phase where Sega was like quality, and then they just fell off the face of the earth, and now they're finally starting the ball rolling on re-releasing a lot of their IPs, or at least allowing that to happen. As that's the ray of hope here, though. Konami can look at those situations and be like, we don't have to tell people they're not allowed to use our IPs and then they have to go off and make Bloodstained, get all the credit and get all the money and we get nothing. We could just allow a small team to make a Castlevania game. That way we get money, but we don't have to deal with it. That's basically the way Sega does it, and that's a pretty smart move for a lot of these, let's say, classic video game companies that are sitting on IPs that nowadays basically appeal to a niche fan base. It's not impossible to make money out of that. They just have to know how to do it. And I really feel like Sega created that model, and Konami could be ripe for going into that. But we'll see how that plays out, if it ever does.
Well, what you were saying earlier, I do believe Konami is ripe, mainly because, you got the Castlevania series. You got a lot of buzz around that. A lot of people are digging the mythos of it again. And, the retro games still sell very, very well. So yes, it might be a smaller market, but I do think the mass appeal is there, and you're right, yes, they definitely should go to outside development, let somebody else make a nice one, something that is really, really well. I just want something like Curse of the Moon, the retro take on it. I just want something like that in the Castlevania universe. I just want to be Simon Belmont again. Honestly, I just miss being Simon Belmont. Even reading Richter, I never got to be Richter.
Did you happen to... I mean, I know it wasn't very good, and it's very short and all that, but did you happen to play that Castlevania... I think it was Castlevania Resurrection E3 demo that leaked for the Dreamcast, like, a few months ago?
No.
Yeah, I mean, technically, you can try that, although I tried playing it, and I really didn't enjoy it, but I'm also not I'm not a big Castlevania guy, but a lot of people kept saying, like, no, it's just bad. There's a reason they canceled it, so...
there's a reason why I like Castlevania 2 so much. There's something about whipping people in games, and for some reason, the way that game goes, because, again, in Castlevania 2, you have to whip a lot of guys, because you got to gain your hearts up. And I just love doing that. I'm like one of those general guys. I just love running through a level and whipping things, man. I don't want to know where I'm going. I want to go left to right. I want to whip things.
You mean the NES? You're referring to the NES Simon's Quest game, right? Have you played the fan updated version of that?
Yes, I actually have a blood red card of it.
Nice. I was hoping you would say that. For those who don't know, Simon's Quest. I mean, I think the AVGN really brought that to light about certain bugs and issues he had with that game. And there was an updated version of it made by the community where they fixed a lot of issues that he had pointed out, and that the community certainly has known for years.
I thought that was funny, really, because when he pointed those out, I never really thought about it my entire life. I've been playing Castlevania, Simon's Quest, for so long. I had no problem with it. I've memorized everything for so long. I never thought about the bad stuff when I was a kid. And then he just brought that stuff home, and I'm really, really happy they made that. Great improvements on the game. Definitely the time frame and the clues, mainly the clues, are a big help.
Yeah, so you could not only play a ROM of that now, but you could actually get, as Keith actually has it, the reproduction cartridge, so you can actually play it on an NES if you really want to. So that's cool, but I'm with you that I would love it if Konami went into that model of allowing, even if they don't want to handle it, letting other devs make games out of their franchises. And I think, I will say with some level of optimism that since Sega is proving that does work, and Konami actually did open the door and say we're going to allow some of this stuff to get re-released and all that, it's not impossible. If that's vote with your wallet. You want more Castlevania stuff, support that re-release stuff, and you have a much better chance at it. It's definitely not impossible.
Business 101, man. They go where the money is all day.
Yep.
There's a reason why we got 1 billion freaking Call of Duty games, and or the fact that GTA 5 is still just GTA 5 and will always just be GTA 5. Feels like. I don't think there's ever gonna be a 6.
Why would there be? They make so much money off that game. And it's been out
business.
now for 8 years.
I understand the business 100%. I understand the business when it comes to Red Dead Redemption. I mean, all I want in the world for Red Dead Redemption 2 is a DLC pack where I can play my single-player campaign. But nope, they're making their money, and more power to them. It's going to help them make better games maybe in the future.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you wanted to say about Konami and their dead franchises? I want more Silent Hill. Let's put it that way.
I want more Bayou Billy. I want them to actually anybody out there who did that Castlevania redo. If anybody wants to get into Bayou Billy and fix some things in that, I really appreciate it because I enjoy the heck out of that game. It's just hard as shit. You know, it was a great idea mixing up the light.
Game Genie. Try some Game Genie. Try some Game Genie.
Such a good potential game.
Try Game Genie.
I got a Goodwill for $2.
Try Game Genie. That might help.
I don't have Game Genie for NES, so maybe.
All right. Yeah, aside from that, Konami's franchise that I want back, and everybody does for the longest time, is Silent Hill, which there's always rumors that Silent Hills might come back and be a thing. So that would be my number one, but, we'll see how that ever goes.
With the hype of Resident Evil, I think it's a good time for it.
It always is, but again... Konami, like I said at the beginning of this, Konami is in a weird position where they have all these legendary IPs that they're not using, and they don't have enough faith or talent to deal with, but they now have a business model for how to handle it that Sega has been using, and they could very well do it themselves. They could be like, okay, you know what, Sega proved it, and let's do it. So it's not impossible to think they'd be like, look, let's get over all this problems we had with Kojima, and we'll just go ahead and let him use the Silent Hill IP, even though we don't have to deal with it. We just make money. It's the same thing with Metal Gear Solid eventually. Just let them make money.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Also, Konami tended to make a lot of older, especially their older arcade games, a lot of IP games. A lot of their famous games are IP games. People don't notice that. You know? They think about that and they're like, oh, why don't they do this game and that game? Well, those are intellectual property games, so they would have to pay a little bit of money. You know, if you think about Konami, they made a lot of like really great beat 'em ups, but a lot of them are tied to properties.
Can you give me an example?
Alien vs. Predator. What's Capcom? No, Turtles in particular is Konami.
Oh yeah.
Though we did get the Outgame stuff. I mean, they sold the property because Nickelodeon has it, and they want to make money. So.
Ninja Turtles has swapped hands many times. I believe the current. Nickelodeon owns the Ninja Turtles outright, but I don't know who owns the video game rights. It might be Nickelodeon as well. It was Ubisoft last time for like a hot minute. That's how you got that reshelled thing. I assume you're right. Nickelodeon probably has it, and they probably license it out now. But,
I feel like I see their label on even the At Games thing as well. I think I saw the Nickelodeon label on that.
It's probably the case.
But it's on their NECA stuff. It's on their action figures, everything like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, you're also, now that you're bringing this all to light, I'm thinking like that X-Men arcade game, same thing. Simpsons arcade, which funny enough, both of them are in the possession of Disney now.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's not impossible to work some of that stuff out, but generally I think they think it's just not really worth the money. The red tape that goes in there.
I was definitely excited when Capcom made that beat 'em up bundle, and I was always wishing for Konami to do something like that, but I understand why they can't.
There was a hot minute there on the 360 where they actually re-released all of those in digital form.
Yep.
The Simpsons arcade game, the X-Men arcade, and I believe even the Ninja Turtles arcade game was on that.
My roommate at the time had the Simpsons arcade game. I remember actually getting to beat that game and just going crazy because I was like, I can just keep playing? You mean I can just hit continue and keep going? That was probably the first time I ever got to do that with an arcade game.
Oh, totally. And it's just it's another one of those arguments against digital, by the way, because, the rights changed. Okay, pull them all. Never allow it again. Yeah, well, that's a different discussion, obviously. But all we're saying is, Konami's been sitting on some good stuff over the years. They've made some great things, and it would be nice to see them go into a better direction than the kind of total irrelevance that they have been for quite some time now.
Exactly. Also, like, what are their fighting game properties?
I don't even remember, man.
I was just trying to remember what Konami had. They must have had something.
Yeah, I'm sure they did, but I honestly can't think of it. Like, for me, fighting games typically boil down to, like, anything SNK does, or, like, Tecmo does. But you're right. I'm sure Konami did, but they're just not coming to my mind at the moment.
Nah, fair enough. It's all good. Yeah,
So,
definitely, we all wish that we could bring things back, and that's why I like to bring up these dream scenarios sometimes, every now and then. It's nice to dream. It's nice to keep dreaming.
So this section of this subject is really like the real suggestions in the first half of this is like how it feels like how they're actually running things currently, or at least how it felt like they were running things a few years ago.
Oh God,
yeah. So anything else to say on this before we move on to the next subject?
No, I covered that. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. It's funny you all right. So our next subject here, and it's funny you mentioned beat 'em ups and fighting games because that's probably the only good thing that came of this. I'm just gonna bring it up. Space Jam 2, the movie is a war crime. That is a horrible film. I had the misfortune of seeing it, and so I need to just kind of rant here for a second.
Sir, you're allowed to rant. You may rant.
Okay, thank you. Now, look, I know it's not a movie review channel, but we do occasionally look at movies and stuff on this podcast. But I had the misfortune of watching Space Jam 2 I have HBO Max, right? So I just decided to watch there. I wasn't going to go see this in a theater. And I was tweeting like live as it was happening. And my first thought was, it took 25 minutes before you saw any of the Looney Tunes show up in a Looney Tunes movie, or what is supposedly a Looney Tunes movie. 45 minutes into the movie, I legitimately thought I had been watching for 3 hours. About an hour into the movie, I was watching it on an Xbox One, and my Xbox One just fucking gave up and died. It just shut off, and I had to do like a hard reset, and I was pretty convinced that my Xbox One committed suicide in an attempt to not have to sit through Space Jam 2 any longer. That was ultimately one of the worst cinematic experiences I've ever been through, and I just want to break down a couple of reasons why. And we'll talk about Space Jam 1 here, because I know you've seen it, and I know you haven't seen Space Jam 2. You said you were avoiding it, so...
Well, we actually had enough of a break between my earlier appointment. I was actually watching scenes and a lot from Space Jam 2 while I was taking a break before we started the podcast, actually. So I'm actually pretty caught up on a lot of the scenes, and there's one scene in particular. There's a lot of scenes in particular I want to talk about. So feel free. Yeah,
sure.
I'll know exactly what you're talking about. But God, sorry, I apologize. Porky Pig rapping.
Notorious P.I.G. We'll get I want to talk about, like, you guys don't understand, like, not only was I tweeting about this, like, I was checking in on people like a week later to be like, how are you guys doing? Is everybody holding up okay? Because the movie was like, to me, was like a national tragedy of just utter incompetence. Now obviously it's a dumb movie, who cares, but I took it kind of serious. I kind of wanted to take it serious. And first, let's talk Space Jam 1, because anytime you mention that Space Jam 2 is a bad movie, you inevitably get people like, yeah, but first Space Jam sucked too. Now, first of all, that is an idiotic argument. But if you're actually going to come at me with that, I want to talk just basic narratives. Space Jam 1 is no masterpiece of cinema. Let's not kid ourselves. And I realize that to an extent, I grew up in Chicago in the 90s in the Jordan Bulls era, so I'm going to have a little bit of a bias, and I fully acknowledge that. But at least that movie understood the basics of film structure. It understood that Michael Jordan isn't really the protagonist of that story. Bugs Bunny is. If you think about it, the core conflict of the movie is Bugs Bunny has to deal with these aliens that are coming to abduct him and enslave his people. And out of desperation, his solution is to grab Michael Jordan to help them in a unique situation that they created. Michael Jordan is just going along for the ride, and he actually is resistant to doing anything with them until, like real life, his opponents basically told him, you can't do this, you're not good enough. Like that scene where the Monstars, like,
and
turn him into a ball. Yeah, he took it personally. Right. And anybody who saw The Last Dance or has been on the internet for the last year and knows what memes are. Michael Jordan, that's how he was. You can't tell him he can't do something because it'll drive him crazy, and he will destroy you for it. And that's all the motivation he needed. The movie was smart enough to know Jordan is not an actor, so he's not going to do anything other than play the straight man. He very rarely attempts to give levity to a scene or make jokes. He just kind of sits there and looks stoic. And he didn't win an Oscar, and he never was going to, but he was acceptable in that role. And that was, and so the movie follows just basic film structure elements, beginning, middle, end. It has a good runtime. It knows what it is, and it's funny. It actually has a nice balance of humor. I mean, you got Bill Murray in this thing in possibly one of his best performances. Like, he's hysterical in that movie, while also attaching it to real life history. You know, like, it's the what did Michael Jordan do while he was playing baseball thing. And it's even funnier. One of the biggest criticisms I see of that movie is compared to Space Jam 2. Because Space Jam 2, they show LeBron's house, and it's like his mansion in Los Angeles. And they're like, the problem with that's more real. Because in the first movie, they try to present Michael Jordan like he lives in suburbia in some house. And when in reality, he had a giant mansion. It's like, yes, that's true. But he was playing for the Barons at the time, and at the time he only had like a normal house in Alabama. So that's actually real. But people never know that part. They're like, his Chicago mansion. He wasn't playing baseball in Chicago. He was playing baseball in Alabama. So that's actually the kind of house he was in. Anyway, that's like a small criticism. If that's like the worst thing you got, whatever. Anyway, so I just want to clear up that Space Jam 1 has a basic, understandable structure. So you get to Space Jam 2, and
well, I got also one more thing to point out about Space Jam 1. Is I want to admit that Space Jam 1 has a really good moral for kids and for adults when it comes to talent and embracing your talent, embracing what you already had within. Michael Jordan even uses the placebo effect on Bugs Bunny to get him to have more confidence in himself and the Looney Tunes and stuff. So there is a distinct message there. You're half
right. You're half right. Your message is correct, but it wasn't Michael Jordan who did that. It was Bugs who did that to the rest of the Looney Tunes and told Michael Jordan to play along. I'm telling you, Bugs Bunny is the protagonist of that movie. Michael Jordan's just there.
That's the first time I heard that, and I'm going through the movie right now, start to finish. I'm like, you're completely correct. It's all about the Looney Tunes, and they just grab Michael Jordan because that's the name that pops in your head when you hear a good basketball player. Oh, who's a good basketball player? Michael Jordan. Grab.
Yeah, and he's not playing right now, so he's totally available. He was the anomaly, the outlier, because they're right. In the movie, like, the villain, the alien, he was like, why didn't you get this guy? Referring to Michael Jordan, because he wasn't playing, so the aliens didn't know who he was, and he was just an anomaly. He was the only character that hypothetically could have helped them, because he was like, well, I mean, in reality, the NBA had a lot of talented players, but this, to be fair, Space Jam kind of pretends like those were the 5 best when only 2 of those 5 guys was actually any good.
But that's we got story. Muggsy Bogues, Charles Barkley, a really tall white dude no one remembers.
Sean Bradley. Sean Bradley was only chosen because he was
Grandma
and Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Muggsy Bogues is only famous because he was the smallest person to ever play professional basketball. Sean Bradley was simply the tallest guy in the league at the time, so they just thought the imagery was good. And then Larry Johnson was just a dude who was like shredded, but he was just like an okay power forward. Like, it was just whatever. It didn't really matter. So that's not the point. But Jordan, he wasn't playing. So there's just like this narrative to it that makes it all the more interesting. He was an unwilling, opponent, or one unwilling,
participant.
Teammate. Yeah, participant. Perfect word. So he was an unwilling participant, but he was just like, all right, the hell with it, I'm gonna do this because they challenged me and that pissed me off, and I took it personally. That's all it did. That's all that is.
Yeah, at first he was like, I don't even know if I can still play, guys. I'm wearing golf shoes. I mean he's not even confident in himself there, and that's Michael Jordan talking about it.
And let's I'm glad you brought that up, because I've seen people talk about how Space Jam 2 is a giant ad, and then when they say, well, the first one was just a giant ad for his shoes, and I'm like, until you said that, I never even thought about that. That's how subtle that is.
Yeah.
Because the most egregious aspect of that is simply like, he's wearing golf shoes because he was playing golf, So at some point they need to get basketball shoes. They don't sit there and hold the shoes to the camera and like wink and say, "Buy Jordans." He just literally is like, "Oh, there he is. There's the shoes. Okay, put them in the bag." Like, that's actually has a narrative purpose. It's not solely an ad. You know what I mean? But that's actually, and I'm going to say it though, that is a little bit of a defense I'll give to Space Jam 2. People call it a big Warner Brothers ad. I think it wasn't so much an ad as it was just a horrible misfire, but let's jump into Space Jam 2, all right?
Absolutely.
So Space Jam 2 starts off with possibly the worst first impression it could give its target audience. What is it? Its target audience, I'm going to say this. The target audience of this movie, and everybody says, "Oh, it's a kids movie. What do you care?" Is not kids. It is not kids. And let's put this out there. Let's just do this. That entire film is based on nostalgia built up over the last 25 years since the first one. Kids today are not looking for the Looney Tunes because they don't really know who they are. And if a kids movie would not have Rick and Morty in it, a kids movie would not have Pennywise in it. It would not have all those supervillains. It would not have the characters from A Clockwork Orange.
Herculoids.
Yeah, it would not, a true on-point kids movie would not have those things. The most egregious, and this is barely egregious, adult-only reference in Space Jam 1 is when Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd are dressed up like the characters from Reservoir Dogs for one shot. That is the single most quote-unquote mature-only scene
I think
in
they were
Space
doing
Jam 1.
Pulp Fiction, weren't they?
Right. Is it
or was that Reservoir
Yeah,
Dogs?
you're Pulp Fiction.
Because I
Either way, it's
they did the music, and I could have swore Pulp Fiction.
No, you're right. You're right. Pulp Fiction. Either way, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's the most mature reference in that movie. Whereas the second one is just, oh no, it's a kids movie, but it's not even just you have Pennywise in the background. Rick and Morty straight up talk and are relevant to the plot. So like, shut up with it's only a kids movie
review
defense.
Online where 30 minutes of the review was just gushing the fact that Rick and Morty were in there. The guy was like, "Oh my god, the fact that Rick and Morty were in there just made the entire movie." I'm like, "Holy crud, it wasn't that good." Holy crud.
No, it was terrible. So, all right, I need to just keep going here. I'm sorry. I've been holding on to this forever. But so you get the opening scene, and this is now again you call it a kids movie. It's not a kids movie. It's a man-child movie, and I know I am one. I understand what they are trying to present to me. And so the opening scene fundamentally does not know who its target demographic is, because what is the first thing that happens? You meet LeBron James as a high school student in 1998, and he gets a Game Boy, and he's like, okay, this is the target audience right here, is probably people who play video games. And the opening lesson of the film is LeBron at one time sucked at basketball because he played a video game once for 5 minutes. And so what does he do? He throws out a DMG Game Boy. All right, already you're just like, you've pissed off your entire fan base, like right there. Like, that's awful to try and teach that lesson. But then, no joke, the lesson that video games are bad is the core principle of the entire film. It's not even just, hey man, you played a video game, you weren't paying attention in the game, and you lost the game once. It's all video games are bad. I mean, if you think about it, once he's an adult, his son's like playing like a Vita or whatever he's playing, or it looked like an NVIDIA Shield, something to that effect. And he's basically, LeBron's like, you can't be a professional basketball player unless you put in the work. And the kid's like, I just want to go to E3. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, I just want to go to E3. Yeah. And his dad's like, you're a shitty son. Like, LeBron is a horrible father in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there is no scene. I mean, Space Jam 1, Michael Jordan's son is, I think it's Jeff is his name. Mm-hmm. He's playing baseball. He comes home from the game and he's like depressed because he's not very good at it. Jordan didn't sit there and be like, dude, you suck. You're never going to be my son unless you can be, awesome at baseball. I am the best athlete ever. And if you're not as good as me, you're the worst. He's just like, well, I'm sorry you're feeling bad. And then they just exchange like how Jordan was also had a bad day playing baseball, and they're just not in a perfect position. That's the standard protagonist arc, even though Jordan isn't really the protagonist of that movie, is a character that has flaws and learns from them. That's Space Jam. It's kind of first one's like a split between Bugs Bunny. It's Bugs Bunny's story, and Jordan is kind of supposed to be the protagonist, but he's really not. Anyway, that doesn't matter. This one, LeBron just starts off like flawless, because like that opening scene after he loses the game, his coach tells him straight to his face, "You are going to be the greatest basketball player who has ever lived. You are the ultimate. You are the peak." This kid's like 19, not even 19, because LeBron was already in the NBA at that point. So this would have been in 98. That was 5 years before he was in the NBA. So he was like 14. This movie really felt like 50% of it was written by LeBron James's like management, who just wanted to talk about how great he is. And then the other half was written by an AI, which is hilarious because there's an AI sentient bot in the movie as a whole narrative. And that bot, his whole thing, the bot they created was just designed to reference stuff. And they each wrote something called Space Jam 2. Then they threw it into a blender and played Mad Libs with it and then shot that. That's how you got this movie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and expedite this because obviously I'm taking forever in my rant here. But, like, you know, he becomes an adult. LeBron's a horrible father. He meets his kid who is, like, a next-level programmer. He makes a video game at 14. And it's actually, I mean, it looks like a crappy video game, to be completely honest. But, like, the fact that he could even do that well is amazing. And LeBron's just like, "No, you suck. You have to play. You can't play video games. Oh, I'm playing your game. Your game has a bug in it. You're a shitty son." Later, like he's just terrible as a father in this. And then eventually they're like, "Okay, we have a meeting over at Warner Brothers, and they want us to do a movie together." And you know, LeBron's like, "Yeah, I can't act," which was true, and I'm glad they at least acknowledged that, which is fine. And then they have this whole concept of there's an AI played by Don Cheadle, one of the world's greatest actors. And you knew this movie sucked when Don Cheadle made you cringe. Like, he was bad in this. And I don't blame him because it's like, what do you even do with this material? But then Don Cheadle's motivation goes from like, I just want LeBron in movies to I want to take LeBron and make him part of the AI collective or whatever the hell he wants. Like they just had to shoehorn an excuse for him to play basketball. It made like no sense whatsoever. And it was just, I'm still like reeling from it. Like it was just so dumb on so many levels. And then you get into, finally LeBron's like sucked into this AI universe thing. And if you notice, when you watch that scene, he's basically falling. And he basically passes through Harry Potter world, Matrix world, DC Universe world. He just happens to crash land on Looney Tunes land, right? And the only Looney Tune that's there is Bugs. Now the reason that's different, the first movie, it was a conflict for the Looney Tunes. They went and specifically got Jordan to help them. In this case, LeBron is the one who for some reason needs help to like free his son, who he doesn't even seem to like very much. He's got to do all this, and he tries to recruit help, but he just happens to fall into the Looney Tune land first. Like, and he even says it when they're trying to make a team. He doesn't want any of the Looney Tunes on his team. He only wants like Superman, King Kong, Iron Giant, like all these like crazy things, which of course made me think of LeBron's Miami Heat days where he just cheated his way to a title. Yep. But it's like Jordan had to pull off defeating the Monstars with Tweety Bird and Grandma, and LeBron's like, "We need Superman on our team." Like, it's just, shut up. But anyway, so they make a whole big deal about LeBron James being like the superstar of the universe, like his Twitter. He has the most Twitter followers. He's the most popular person ever. I'm like, who? I really think it was just LeBron James's management that wrote this movie. And I want this on the record. I really have nothing against LeBron James as an individual. He's obviously a very talented player. I think this was just like too many people telling him like, yeah, they're going to love if like half the movie is just talking about how great you are. It just doesn't coalesce into a competent story at all. And then they jump from reference to reference to reference. And it's not even like relevant reference usually. It's just like, hey, remember the Matrix? Remember that? Remember Bullet Time? Remember that from 20 years ago? Remember that? Well, here it is again, because nobody's done a Matrix Bullet Time joke. But and somewhat in their defense, because people are saying like how awful it is. It's like, we've seen the Bullet Time joke done a million times, like all the way back in like Shrek 1 and all that sort of stuff. I will say, as much as it did kind of annoy me to see it, it has been, sadly, 20 years. It's probably okay to make references to it again. Same with Austin Powers and all that sort of stuff. You know, whatever. The best part in that whole section of the movie, though, I will say, is the DC Universe part where it's animated and Superman rescues him. I kind of predicted that would happen. That's exactly what did happen. That was like when the Looney Tunes were at their best, when they were 2D animated in the DC section and Daffy Duck is actually acting like Daffy Duck. I liked that. And skipping way ahead here, because the whole basketball game comes up, and it's really stupid because they're like, there's style points, and so there's no understanding, there's no competent understanding of what the rules of this game are, so there's really no stakes for the audience, because we don't even really understand, like, how they can or cannot win. Because even if you have a casual understanding of basketball, you understand it's not possible for a player to get 1,000 points in a shot because he decided to, like, dunk it from half court or some crazy thing. You know, so you just kind of lose any sort of stretch connection to the storyline. And then they have this whole bit where they bring in, like, all these people are getting sucked in through all the universe. So, like, all of LeBron James's Twitter followers, like, this is relevant plot point stuff. All of his Twitter followers get sucked into the universe, and they have to watch him play basketball. Which also included all the fictional characters. So then you're seeing characters like Pennywise and The Mask and Batman standing there, but then you look at him and you get enough shots of them where you're like, it feels like you're in Times Square or like outside of in Los Angeles and like Hollywood Boulevard or whatever, where you just see people dressed up as the characters but they look wrong, and it just takes you out of it. It's really weird. I will say though, they had one good bit around that time, because they get to the point where it's like halfway, it's halftime in the NBA game, or the game, whatever, and they go into the back, and they're all like depressed because they're like, we're gonna lose. Kind of trying to do the same scene from the first Space Jam, but it's different because this is the one time they legitimately got a nice, hearty laugh out of me, which was, they're like, you know, Sylvester the Cat's like, guys, I found him. I found Michael Jordan.
Oh,
and
God.
They play like his Bulls intro music and everything, and like, and I was like, and then LeBron looks like he's just like so excited, like a little kid in a candy store, like, oh my God, my idol, you know, whatever. And then they have him walking down, and then they reveal it, it's the actor Michael B. Jordan, and they're like, no, that's Michael B. Jordan. And I will say that part, I died. That was fantastic. The movie earned a point on just that.
I agree.
Just that alone. But that was like really pretty much its only redeeming quality, to be totally honest. Because then, I haven't even mentioned it. You know, there's an enemy team in this movie, and you're introduced to them like 5 seconds before the game starts. They're called the Goon Squad, and they're like supposed to be mutated versions of Anthony Davis and other NBA players. And it's like, we had no connection to this, so this doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, and I don't know, man. It was truly dreadful, and like, it brings into a lot of question, because at some point they reveal that Don Cheadle's character can just cheat and change the score to whatever he wants, and so it's like, there's truly no stakes to this. And I haven't even mentioned LeBron James's son is so fed up with LeBron that he decides to be on the Goon Squad. So his son is with the quote-unquote villain. And I'm like, that's how bad LeBron James's character, and I'm not saying the person, his character in this movie is, that you're actually rooting for the villain for most of the movie. Like, LeBron James is not a likable protagonist at all in this storyline, to the point where his son is like, I would rather play on the enemy team where we're literally risking the fate of all of humanity and society to just not be with you, Dad. Like, this whole movie breaks down to, the world was almost destroyed because LeBron James would not let his kid go to E3. I just want people to understand, at its core, that's what happens. Now, obviously, they win with, like, the stupidest thing. So earlier, they had established that there was a glitch in the kid's game, and the kid's game is basically what they're playing in the VR whatever universe. And the glitch is, if you do this one kind of step-back shot from the three-point line, the game crashes, which is what they want to trigger, because that would mean that they are freed. But whoever does the shot is basically deleted from the game. So I thought this movie would do something smart. I thought, foolishly, that they were going to somehow trick Don Cheadle into doing that move. because if he did it, he would crash his own server and delete his own existence. So in essence, you kill the villain without the hero having to kill them, right? No, they don't do that. They try to go for the sacrificial route, which, okay, that's a different type of story arc. You can do that. So they set it up, and LeBron's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the move. And you're like, oh, man. I mean, we know as an audience LeBron James is not going to die in a Space Jam movie, but you just go, oh, wow, all right, okay, I'm that's normal, good story progression. I got you. And then all the characters are like, no, you can't. You'll be deleted. And LeBron deflates all tension in the movie by going, no, I'm a real person. I'll be fine. Okay. Wow, I'm on the edge of my seat now. It just gave me like Star Wars Phantom Menace flashbacks when every time you saw the droids, like Qui-Gon Jinn or Obi-Wan would be like, no, they're not a problem. Wow, I'm really excited to see how you handle this situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, who cares now? There's no tension. But anyway, so they inbound the ball. Bugs Bunny steals it, and he's like, no, I'm going to do this. And he does the step back move. The whole thing crashes, and he's deleted from the game. And you're like, oh no, they killed Bugs Bunny. Like, wow, that's really sad, you know? And then, but they won, and they get out of the serververse, and they try to move on with their lives, mourning the death of Bugs Bunny. And so at the end, LeBron's like, all right, son, I guess because we almost destroyed the entire world, I sort of learned that you like video games instead of professional basketball. You can go to E3. And as he drops his kid off, Bugs Bunny just shows up. He's like, oh, no, I'm fine. Let's go hang out. Oh, that's cool. Like, how did Bugs come back? All he says is like, you can't, I'm a toon, I'll be fine. It's like, what? I can't even, like...
The old cliche, like Roger Rabbit, you can't kill toons without dip or something? Jesus.
Yeah, no, it was so dumb. Like, there's no explanation for it all. Like, okay, this is not... can you think of a movie off the top of your head where like there's a tragic death of a main character? Maybe like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where Spock dies. And so it's all traumatic, and they shoot his corpse out into space. And obviously he does come back in the third movie. I know that. But let's pretend, for argument's sake, there was no movies after that. There was just, it ended with the second film. And, you're just watching the movie, and everybody's sad, and you're watching, you're as emotional as everybody else. And then just 5 seconds later, Spock walks through the door. He's like, actually, I'm fine. Oh, good. That's pretty much what happens. Like, it's like, it's not even a joke. It's just like, what? The whole point was you couldn't do what you just did. All right. And then it's over, and you want to cry. Because it took 2 hours of your life to get through the stupidest thing I have seen in a long, long, long time. It is like genuinely offensive to the senses how awful of a film Space Jam: A New Legacy was. I'm sorry, rant over.
Man, I'll tell you one thing about this freaking movie is I did enjoy the 2D artwork. I enjoyed looking at it and stuff like that. But I did not enjoy that they had to switch it into the, CG world later on. They had to transform into still a cartoon technically. Okay. But now it's like CG. To me, it's not superior. To me, it's not a superior art form, CG to, hand-drawn or even computerized 2D animation. It's not a superior art form, so I don't see the big, thing that they did with the big reveal and everything. Oh, look, he has kind of fur like Sonic did. I don't know. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy... Also, the fact that the message of the movie, and like you said earlier, the movie is meant for adults, and it's disguised as a kid's movie. The overall message, it seems like it's for adults, and telling adults what to do, stuff like that. Rather than
that's actually a really good way of phrasing
it. Around.
Dude, that's a great way of phrasing it, because the lesson is not for the kid in the story. The lesson is for LeBron about let your kid play a fucking video game. What's wrong with you? That's not the type of lesson you teach a kid. You know what I mean?
No, it's completely the wrong message at all. I've never seen a message so warped. It's like the adult is wrong and the kid is right. Let them... Is this like a ploy to get them to play video games more? I'm not exactly sure. What?
It just... honestly, I know I ranted for a long time, but, I really... I almost feel like if I really was committed to it, I could open an entirely new YouTube channel to just talking about problems with Space Jam 2.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's just... And I know everybody out there, the common reaction is like, dude, it was just a shitty movie, move on. Yeah, I know. I get that. But I went to film school. I have a directing degree. The idea that this got made by people that supposedly know how stories are supposed to be told is just genuinely offensive. Like, it's just, I mean, there's worse movies. I'll give you that. But this one is just, I just cannot understand how anybody could have, greenlit this in any real way. Like, I mean, you could have fixed this in a couple of drafts. You work, like the first one, you work within your crazy limitations and you just pull it out. Space Jam, the original, should not have worked. It shouldn't have. It was a ridiculous concept, but they somehow got lightning in a bottle and they made this movie that just, you can hate it all you want. You can think it's dumb, but it clearly has stood the test of time. 25 years later, the sequel aside, that movie just got another 4K restoration. Like, there are actually a lot of legit fans of that movie, and it's one of the handful of times that they've ever made a real attempt to do, like, 2D and live action crossover things. Like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit is probably the iconic example, but Space Jam 1 is really the only other major example of that. Then the other ones are just very limited. Things like Looney Tunes Back in Action. And even Space Jam 2 doesn't offer you that much of that, because the majority of the time, LeBron James himself is animated with the other animated characters, or he's live action and then they did CG with him. There's very little like...
What happened there? Because Jordan was when Jordan got pulled into the Toon universe, he was himself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
He wasn't. That's weird.
It's it doesn't. And like this is kind of an in-joke within the movie, whether or not the events of the first movie happened or not, because they treat it both like a movie and they treat it like an event that occurred. It's not really consistent, and it doesn't really matter. I'm not watching Space Jam for its continuity, but it's just it's lore universe continuity. But it's just so. It's just offensive to the senses, like how dreadful of an experience that was. So I just wanted you guys to know where I stood on that very controversial issue of is Space Jam 2 good or not.
Could have used a little more space in my Jam 2. There wasn't much space. It wasn't like
there was no space. Aliens. There was no space in Space Jam 2.
And honestly, there wasn't much jam because as a person who played I play basketball, I follow basketball very well. There wasn't much actual basketball in there to get people excited also about the game. That's another also underlying thing that came from Space Jam. It got kids to play basketball. They go outside and shoot a basketball. That's a big thing.
Like I said, the stakes of that basketball game are ridiculous because they don't make any sense.
The video game,
it's like, okay, it's a weird video game version where you can make stuff up on the fly. It's basically like, ironically, it is like watching a bunch of little kids saying, if I make this shot, it's worth 1,000,000 points. It's just like kids making up rules as they go. And it's ridiculous. It's when a story has no parameters, no definable parameters, there is no drama. When we can't understand the stakes of a situation, it has no drama. And when you intentionally remove tension from the narrative, such as LeBron saying, like, they're like, oh no, you'll get deleted, and he's like, no, I won't, I'm a person. Wow, I'm on the edge of my seat. Or Bugs Bunny died, that's so terrible. No, he's fine. Like, it's just, you can't do that. That just removes any emotional investment in a storyline. Like, you understand watching the first Space Jam stakes are incredibly obvious. It's, okay, it's not the entire world will be destroyed, which is eventually what Space Jam 2 escalates to for some ridiculous reason. But it's basically like, I mean, if you think about it, the AI's motivation went from, I just want LeBron James to be in movies, to, I want to destroy the entire world. Like, in one go. It just changed on a dime. But the original movie was just Schwackhammer, which was the alien boss voiced by Danny DeVito. He's like, look, my amusement park sucks. I need a new attraction so that I can make money. He's the one who sets all the events in motion, and he's just like, hey, the Looney Tunes, they're funny. Go get them. They'll be our slaves. And that's all it is. And the Looney Tunes just being like, wow, we so don't want to do that. And so they come up with a plan, which is, we'll trick them into doing something that they're biologically incapable of doing, so we think, and then they're like, oh crap, that backfired. Let's get Michael Jordan. He's retired, and boom, they are going to win the game, or at least they hope to win the game. It's then elevated during the game when Jordan expands on their deal by offering a new bargaining chip. If we lose, you get me. If we win, you got to give the NBA players their talent back. So that's just called elevating stakes. But the rules are very simple. It's just Jordan and the Looney Tunes do not want to be slaves versus they want to free their friends. That's it. That's all it is. This is I'm still not even sure what the hell Space Jam 2 was trying to do. It was like, you're trying to free your kid who is there of his own volition so that you can prevent him from living his own life, which just includes going to E3 once. Yeah. And if he doesn't get that, the world is going to blow up because an AI decided to take over the world because he wanted to make movies, but then you didn't want to do his movies.
I don't really think reference comedy really works without also putting the standard movie tropes in it as well. I mean, a lot of shows nowadays, Adult Swim shows and whatnot, use that reference comedy as the majority of their material. But Seth MacFarlane uses a lot of that stuff. But in his movies, he still has a cohesive story with stakes and status, which are your basics for any actor to go through. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the reasons why I appreciate Rick and Morty, but I'm not a fan of Rick and Morty because I'm not a big fan of that style of comedy. I'm just not. I'm not a big style of fan that you have to know. You have to have seen all this other stuff to get any of their jokes. So I didn't. You know.
I mean, South Park did an entire season about member berries. It's a real thing. Yeah. Yep. And as much as I didn't like that season of South Park, that's the one thing everybody really remembers about that season positively is the member berries concept. And it's weird to think that nobody learned that lesson. We're getting worse about it. You know, I'm not like some of the critics of this story who think it's not okay to have these big, IP groupings. I'm actually kind of okay with it as long as you can do that concept justice and do that, like, if there was some reason for them to all coalesce that where it made any real sense. But in this, it's just like, this is supposed to be a LeBron James Looney Tunes adventure, and for some reason, the Iron Giant needs to fist bump King Kong in the background, which truly doesn't make sense because by LeBron's own admission, he wanted them as teammates, but I guess he couldn't get them, and now all of a sudden he has the opportunity to do so, but they don't acknowledge it. They're just sitting there watching the game, and it's just confusing. Like, it just creates... Oh, and one other thing. Like, he wanted Batman and Superman, right?
Yep.
And they didn't want to do it, but then all of a sudden they're both standing there watching the game later? So ask him now? Like, clearly you can make up the rules as you go. Like, that's the thing that pisses me off, I think, the most, is that he didn't... LeBron is the one with the objective. He's the one with the narrative goal of, I guess, free his son so that he can continue to be a horrible father. That's his goal, which is a terrible goal. And he just happened to run into the Looney Tunes first. And once again, much like the first Space Jam, Bugs Bunny is the only one with any sort of clear objective. Bugs Bunny's life was basically destroyed, and he misses all his friends. So he spends that whole middle section of the movie just going around trying to recruit them kind of behind LeBron's back, saying, oh no, we need to go to Matrix World to get somebody. Oh, what do you know? Grandma and Speedy Gonzalez are there. Well, I guess we should just pick them up while we're there. He actually has like a plan, and he's actually going somewhere with this. Whereas LeBron just keeps complaining about how the Looney Tunes are too loony, and they need to just stick to fundamentals, and we need to go get Superman as a teammate.
Because that's probably all the writers knew about the Looney Tunes, is that they were freaking loony.
We need to stop because I will just keep going on about this forever.
Yeah, man.
But like, all I can say to anybody out there is, I would say only watch this as an oddity to truly understand why this is so bad. Like, if you want a great lesson in filmmaking, watch Space Jam 2 so that you understand exactly what to never do. Got it?
Keep that in mind. Anybody who's doing a film class.
There you go. So let's move on because, sorry for how long that took, but I had to get that out of my system.
It was great. It's great, man. Do you feel better? Does it help you out?
I do. Great, it's like throwing up or something. It's great.
I mean, all right. It's a part of your life.
It did. 2 hours. But I hopefully restored some of that for all of you guys out there with a few belly laughs. Yep. More than that movie gave us. Now, We'll move on to our next subject, which is brought to us by Connor Wright. Now, unfortunately, Connor, I have not heard from you in months, but you keep supporting the Patreon, which I appreciate. So I'm just going to keep doing this tradition now of picking something for you. And in this case, I thought of this morning because of a weird situation that happened to me. So let me ask you this question, and then I'll elaborate on what specifically happened. Keith, did you ever find out that you own something really rare in your collection and you had no idea that it was rare?
Absolutely.
Can you perhaps elaborate on what that is, or how that happened and what the item is?
Okay.
And if you need a second,
I usually don't tell people I got it, but okay. I got actually a really I got a Blockbuster copy of Musha. And
the SNES game?
Yes. No. Musha's a Sega game.
Oh, the Genesis game. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Go on.
Blockbuster only exclusive for a while. And so I got the cart with the Blockbuster stuff on it as well. And I had no idea. I thought I got it cheap because it had Blockbuster stickers on it. And had no clue at all. But technically that happened more to me in my toy world than it did my my video game world. So, happened to me a little bit more.
With the case with Musha, like, how did you get it, and how did you find out it was rare?
I got it from a Blockbuster going out of business because they had a bunch of leftover stuff in the back. They had no idea what it was, and it was just a bunch of Sega Genesis stuff. So I just got a whole box of Sega Genesis games. I got like Quackshot, also World of Illusion, all boxed and everything like that. Great condition. They got Blockbuster stickers on the carts, but other than that, it's pretty good. And came with that was this game called Musha, which I didn't really know much about. And I wasn't much of a shooter fan at the time, so I didn't really think much of it. Later on, around, I mean, honestly, like the late 2000s, when like, not late 2000s, but around 2006, 2007, when like ABGN started up and stuff like that, I started watching more of these YouTube guys, and I saw this thing on Classic Game Room, it was called. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was, he said it was expensive, and I looked it up, and that's how I found out.
See, that's a prime example of what I'm talking about. So I realize we've kind of gone over our time on the podcast, so I'm going to just try to wrap this up with two little examples that I have that's very similar. One is an older story. I'm just going to tell it first because I think it's kind of interesting. Then I'll tell what triggered this subject in the first place. So a few years ago, I think in 2015, I was invited to a Ubisoft event for Rainbow Six Siege. That game was just, it hadn't come out yet. It didn't end up blowing up to become the game that it still is. It's still a relevant game that they actively are creating content for. I was invited to an event in Los Angeles, and I went to it, and I was like, oh, it's cool. I got to play the game, whatever. And I came back, and Ubisoft randomly sent me a jacket. I hadn't asked them about it. It just showed up, and it had like a little letter like, hey, thanks for coming to our event. And I was like, this is awesome. Not only did they bring me to their event and all that stuff, they sent me a jacket. You know, that wasn't normal. Now, I never really thought about that jacket again. Like, I still have it. It's a great raincoat. I still wear it, whatever. A couple of years ago, I was at a different Ubisoft event. I want to say it was for like Far Cry 5 or something. And one of the guys that I would see at these events regularly was just staring daggers at me while I'm wearing the jacket. And he goes, Adam, I got to ask you, how did you get the jacket? And I told him what I just told you. And he goes, wow, you were one of the 20? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you have no idea, do you? I'm like, no. And he goes like, okay, so that jacket is like the single most sought after thing in the Rainbow Six Siege community. Because I guess what had happened is Ubisoft had intended to make a bunch of jackets based on that game and to sell them. And then they ended up not having as much confidence in the game, and they decided to cancel that. But they had already made like 20 of these jackets, and they decided rather than try to, recoup 20 jackets, they're like, just give them to some of the people that showed up at the event and just call it a day. And that was all it was going to be. But now the game did blow up. It was huge, and it has like entire industry stuff built around it. And there's super fans of that game that try to collect merch for it. But that jacket happens to be the first officially licensed piece of merch ever created for that game. And so they're like, it is the single most desired thing in that community, worth like, and I was like, how much? He's like, I don't know, a few $1,000s. And I was like, what? Like, that's insane. And he's like, and you're just wearing it. And I'm like, yeah, because to me, it's just a jacket. So, you know, I still have it. I take care of it. But that was a crazy situation like that. But that isn't even the one that triggered this. So here's a story for you. This, a few days ago at the time we record this, I was out I was hanging with my friend James in Philadelphia. And we're at his house. And he's a big Halo super fan, right? And we're just talking about, like, rare games and consoles. He's an owner of a Panzer Dragoon Xbox, by the way. And so we're kind of talking about stuff like that. And then he starts talking about Halo things, which Halo is not my franchise. It never was. I don't dislike it. I'm just not super passionate about it. And, you know, he starts talking about it, and he mentions this thing. He's like, yeah, the holy grail for Halo fans is this thing called the I Heart Bees disc. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I know what that is. I have that. And he's like, no, you don't. And I was like, I think I do. And he's like, no, you don't. He's like, the I Heart Bees disc is the ultimate Halo thing. Like, the only way you could get it was through some weird puzzle contest, and you had to go to this place, and you got this DVD that was a little promo for Halo 2. It is, he's like, there are Halo super fans where, like, they frame it, and it's their entire collection is built around having that disc. And I was like, no, I have that. And he's like, there's no way you have that. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I do. But then I wasn't, you know, I was like, well, now I'm not sure. So I came home and I checked, and yes, I do have that disc. And so the way I got it was actually really stupid, because I showed it in a video maybe like 6 years ago and nobody gave a crap. I went to a video game store here in Chicago that unfortunately no longer exists. And I just went in to hang out with them, you know, just because I like going over there kind of clerk style. And the dude behind the counter knew me, and he was just like, yo, hang on. He's just showing me new stuff. And then he's like, here, check this out. And he hands me this disc in a little case. He's like, yeah, it's some weird Halo 2 promo disc. He's like, you're just going to toss it. Do you want it? And I was like, sure, whatever. And I took it home, made it safe. And so once I confirmed that, James was just like, there are so few copies of that in the world. And, like, it goes for thousands upon thousands of dollars. And you're just sitting on one. And I was like, apparently, I had no idea. Ooh. So, yeah, I know, right? So I don't know I haven't made any decisions on this or anything like that, because literally I found out this information. Like, I only confirmed this within, like, a couple of hours ago at the time we're recording this. I just thought it made for an interesting story.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, just to be honest, like, I actually, Musha is one of my favorite games. It's not a Blockbuster exclusive. I want to bring that up for anybody who's typing right now. Musha is not a Blockbuster exclusive. I got it at a Blockbuster. Sorry, I wanted to correct that. But one other thing, I just found out one of my other games was valuable. I just looked it up. It's a game called Beast Wars Transmetals for N64.
I have that. Yeah, that was a Blockbuster exclusive. I have that in the box.
I have that because I have everything, like, I have tons of Beast Wars stuff because I was actually a fan of the show when I was a kid. So I have a bunch of, you know, it's,
you are a man with
I didn't even know I had
taste. Yes, excellent taste.
Man, yes. Oh, it's my favorite Megatron all day.
Spinator says you have great taste.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Pterosaur, Terrorize, of course, Dinobot. Yes. Definitely great characters.
Keith is of incredible taste.
My Beast Wars Megatron's pretty good, but, like, I have to work on it some more. I can do like the opening of, like,
oh yes,
and then it's kind of hard to continue in that voice. But David K is a legend. Anyway, no, I'm with you. Megatron, Beast Wars, all the way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so, like, that's a prime example of, like, when you get stuff like that. I mean, people can argue that that's like hoarding or whatever, but, like, hey man, I had no idea. I was just giving this thing a home. You know, I like, literally the store was going to chuck it, and I was just like, yeah, all right, no idea what it is. And so it can be a good idea to, like, double check your collection from time to time, be like, because just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't have some sort of fan base or following or something like that. That's all I'm saying.
And I know a lot of people out there are, they might be similar to me. They're more of a player than they are a collector, and you just happen to have a collection of games because you play a lot of them. And some people, you know, just play their games, man. They just like playing games. They like playing fun games like me, and they don't know how much their games are worth. So, yeah, just take a look on eBay real quick, man. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that I kind of tweeted about that. Again, I went to a convention earlier this month in Chicago. Well, technically last month. And this guy had a copy of Kuon for the PS2, right?
Whoa!
And he had the sticker on it for his price, and he had the sticker still on it from when GameStop sold it. And I tweeted, like, this is what happens when video game collecting from 2011 collides with video game collecting in 2021. Because the GameStop sticker was $17.99. His sticker in the 2021 COVID era was $900. So you never know, guys. I've always said for years, I've maintained that it's really only two people. There's only two groups of people that sell their video games off when new stuff comes out, which is people who are desperate and they have no choice in the matter. Like, they're like, look, man, I just want the PS5. I can't afford it. I have to sell my PS4. And that's fine. If that's what you have to do to get the new experience, that's you. But the other audience is fools. Because typically when you're selling stuff to get the next generation of stuff, you're selling it at the absolute worst time. You're selling it when its value is its absolute lowest. And all you have to do is study video game economic trends to understand that. It always comes in waves, and you're basically selling it at its absolute lowest point. Like, the time when nobody wants a PS4 is when the PS5 is brand new. And that's when most people get rid of their PS4s. And that's when there's guys like, I mean, I'm not doing this, but there's guys like me who are sitting around hoarding those, getting those for cheap, and hanging on to them, knowing all the well that in 10, 20 years, the kid who grew up on the PS4 but got rid of it wants it back. And they're going to pay out the ass. And this guy is going to make tons of money. There's people who have entire careers out of that.
Wait, you're telling me a PlayStation 4 is going to work in 20 years?
Yeah, hopefully. CMOS bombs aside, that's just a generic example. But I'm just saying, like, just understand what you have, that it has value eventually, typically. And if you're into retro collecting, that's like selling your stuff right away to get the new thing. That's like the rookie mistake. And I know the counter argument is I can't afford it, and that's fine. That's, if you have to do it, you have to do it. But understand what you're potentially giving up. Just remember that wealth is generated by taking money from the impatient and giving it to the patient. So there you go.
Absolutely lovely way to put it right there.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on this subject or anything else?
Nah, man, I'm with you on it. Goes for a lot of collectibles, guys. So think about all your collectibles, man. As a toy collector, I got a toy off a Loot Crate once because I just wanted to get it, and it's worth over $400 right now, and it was a $5 toy I got in a Loot Crate. So you never know. Sometimes don't buy the exclusive things. Don't buy into trends. If you see a lot of them on the shelf, there's a reason why there's a lot of them. You know.
Yeah, collecting is a weird phenomenon because basically the only stuff that ends up being super valuable is the stuff that was completely worthless for a minute.
Also, remember basic rules: supply, demand.
Yeah, like, how do I put this? Like something like the super common games that like a Super Mario 64 will always have some level of value, but it will never be worth, like, other than that, you know, sealed ones that water grades or whatever. That's a different whole thing entirely that we actually talked about in the first half. Aside from freak events like that, in general, those games will have a basic consistent value. But that's because there were so many copies of them produced and everybody kind of kept them. Where you get your anomalies is the things that nobody kept or were recalled or had a very limited print run. Stuff like NCAA 2K3 for the GameCube where it was recalled, or Pokemon Box where it was only sold in one store. It's always, and those are the type of things where nobody thinks they're going to have any value typically, and that's part of why that gets that way. So collecting has some rules. There's certain exceptions to it always, but typically it's a usual suspect formula. And certain genres do better than others. That's all. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up here. I want to thank Connor Wright for that subject, even though technically he didn't pick it. But it was a great subject, Connor. Thank you. I want to thank you, Keith, for joining me today. I would also like to thank Abdullah for joining me earlier, as well as we got our shout-outs to Joseph Tamburino, Jillian Espinoza, Leafy Poo, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, Trey Wagner. Rob, we miss you, sort of. We'll see you back next time. All Patreon backers, I appreciate your support as always. Again, a reminder, you can get this early. You can get all my videos early. You can get a shout-out. You can pick subjects. You can even be on here, just like you, Keith. So, Keith, where can people find you?
All right, guys, you can find me on the intranets, on Instagram at Lone Wolf Coasters, also on the YouTube at Lone Wolf Coasters. So thanks again, guys. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Keith. And thank you once again to everybody involved, and we'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.
Oh, please, go in the description and follow me, too. I should have said that, too. Go in there. I've got the Instagram. I got the Twitter. Obviously, this Patreon,
super important.
Facebook. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. You can check out the Discord, too. All that stuff. Always appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.